There we go. That means we've started. We started this episode of the Real Christian Podcast. Not just a podcast for Christians, but for unbelievers and skeptics as well. So whether you're Christian or not, it's totally cool with us. I can't say I was ever an unbeliever, but there was a time that I was questioning it. I know a lot of folks out there also are curious and going, what's up with this Jesus guy? What's his deal? Well, he's not just a guy. We're ordinary guys trying to be real Christians, discussing real faith, real issues, and knowing the real Jesus. It's kind of like a Discovery Channel. Like we're learning about the Bible. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, no,
you're
right. This is a journey. This is a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah, so. I'm not trying to get. I'm trying to learn myself so I can be a better Christian. I can be a better man, be a better husband, be a better father, better coworker, better son. All these things that I, wished I could do better in life.
And that's what we're all trying to do. And we will never get 100% of this thing
figured out. It's an ongoing thing. What do they call that? Sanctification?
Sanctification.
I love that. There's some things, Ryan, that I have struggled with in the Old Testament.
Oh, really? Nobody struggles with anything in the Old Testament.
It's pretty easy, straightforward. Pretty straightforward.
Okay. So
easy
you
to
just
comprehend.
Open it to anything that this topic could be about.
It could be a lot of things. It'd be multiple wives.
The Nephilim.
But one of the things that I have become aware of as I've talked to different folks, family members, friends, some of the sticking points are the ones that are like, well, how could Noah lived to be 900 and some years old. How old was he? 950 years old. That's impossible, Ryan. I mean, our bodies can wear out. I mean, I'm going to live maybe to be 85, 90. And these guys were living to be 950. The longest, what I read, because I don't know it off the top of my brain, person who was the oldest recorded in the Bible lived to be 969 years old. It's in Genesis 5:27. I'm told Methuselah. Mm-hmm. One old dude.
He's an old dude.
I mean, can you walk? I mean, is there any flesh, or what does this guy look like at 969 years old? Is he like running? Is he still gathering water and going out and herding the sheep? Or is he like bed bound? I don't know. So that's.
I don't think he looked any different than what we do.
How is that possible? How is that possible?
Okay, so my first and foremost answer is I don't know. I wasn't there. Okay. Nobody really knows. There's a lot of speculation as far as how and why and there, what's going on. So we'll hit on these. But this kind of also gets me back to some of the things that. These are topics that we don't necessarily need to be, basing our entire faith structure on, or this is a make or break, because there are topics in the Bible that God has decided to not tell us the whole thing about it, and we just need to be okay with it. So even though, these are kind of very strange things, we just need to trust God that he knew what he was doing. Now, I do have my own ideas on why and how and stuff like that.
Because I was going, sure, that's the easy way out. We just have to trust that it's there. There's got to be a reason.
Well, I say that because I don't want, guys, and I never want, this is going out to everybody who's watching. I don't ever want to put my faith and my understanding in your, for you to believe. What I want to do is open up the Bible to you. You go do your own research. Do not trust anything that I say. I want you to talk to God. I want you to have, come to your own understanding of things. So when I talk about what I believe, I'm open to interpretation. I'm open to hearing other things because that's how I grow. So where I am today, this is where I'm at. So,
all right.
Okay. So 900 and 60 years old and 962, 969. Also you had someone in there, Enoch, who is another interesting character.
Wasn't he in the Land of the Lost? Wasn't there's like the Slee Stacks? Wasn't Enoch one of the main dudes?
I think he was. That's funny. Man, you're dating yourself, Doug.
I think
got to be
Will.
a little
Yes, Will.
Okay, so all of this is pre-flood.
Pre-flood.
Okay,
the big flood.
The big flood with Noah. This is all pre-flood. Mm-hmm. So first off, this is also during the first part of the creation. It's not far removed from Adam and Eve, coming, God creating them and kicking them out of the garden, because these are all from the line of Adam.
Okay. Adam, who I can't wait till we get to this one later, was meant to be the Jesus, but something didn't go right, so we had to wait a long time for the real guy to come around. Anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so we have to remember that. And so in the beginning, there was not a lot of people on earth. What was the command that he gave Adam?
Oh, gosh.
You remember? We talked about this in class. Populate the earth.
Populate the earth.
That was one of the first things he told him.
Don't eat the fruit from that.
Yeah, no, that was a command. But part of what his job and Eve's job was to go and populate the earth. Well, if man only lives 70 years or, let's just say 80 years, 100 years, you can't have a lot of kids during that time typically. Mm-hmm. So I think God made it intentionally for man to live longer to be able to populate the earth. And so you had to have multiple generations to start that whole population creation time to populate the earth.
Now, did women also live older than normal?
Absolutely. Some theologians will actually say that there were a lot more women than there were men, because one man can impregnate multiple women to help.
So at this point, like the morality of like you can only have one woman was like out the window. Like you guys got to populate. Just go.
Yeah, so that's a tough one in and of itself. But yeah, I still think the whole idea of one man, one woman was probably still there. I'm just telling you what some theologians say. I don't think it's like the animal kingdom where one dog and one bull is going and populating the multiple cows.
I would definitely justify. God told me I need to have sex with all these women to populate the world.
Yeah, I'm not going to go into that.
He told me. Yeah. I know.
I'm not buying that.
Yeah.
But I'm just telling you what some people believe.
Sure.
Okay. But where a lot of people have some hard times with is actually they did have to have relations with their sisters and brothers.
Oh, that's another thing I was kind of curious
about. And that's another kind of hot topic with people, because the thing was back then, the way I view that, the bloodline wasn't distorted, it wasn't hurt, it was it was still pure, so you could have kids with family members and not have the deformities that we have today.
And it doesn't have to be logical, but it does make sense, the watered downness of the gene pool. I could see how later in life, hundreds and hundreds of years,
the longer you go, it just becomes more
complicated.
Yeah, exactly. So you got to kind of get past that thing. So God needed them to live longer, and one of the ways that people think that happens, and I kind of fall in this category, as I was saying, pre-flood, I do believe that there was a canopy of water that kind of covered the earth, because it talked about water coming above and below to flood the earth. So there was water surrounding this globe, which made it like a perfect greenhouse. So the rays and all the other stuff that comes from the sun, the earth was fully protected.
With like, we have an ozone layer we kind of...
That we call, ozone.
But there was a
water vapor,
a
ring of water, whatever that looked like. Okay. Something was there to protect mankind, making this a perfect greenhouse type of environment.
Okay.
And when you have a good environment like that, with not a lot of the decay and issues, maybe you could live longer. Because what happened is right after the flood, you start seeing man's age, how long they're living, start to decline right after the flood.
It's like erosion. You think of erosion and rocks and see the layers, and there was protection before that was able to prolong human life because of these conditions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. So the conditions of the world were a lot different pre-flood. So therefore, could have been impossible that man lived longer because of that. Absolutely. I'm not going to throw that out there. Okay. So, and the reason I say all that is because that kind of leads into if the world did live longer, was different than before. And I mentioned this in class before. That's how come we could probably have dinosaurs as big as they were, because all the dinosaurs are reptiles. And if they lived as long as man did, reptiles don't stop growing. As long as they live, they get bigger.
The dinosaurs from millions of years ago?
Millions of years ago. Yeah, absolutely.
Which,
because, I mean, even today with alligators, and I've used this in class, if alligators continue to grow or continue to live, they just get bigger and bigger and bigger. They don't stop growing. So if we apply that same knowledge to reptiles pre-flood and they were living 900 years, that would make sense that some of these creatures were growing as big as they did back then.
Okay.
And that's where we get our dinosaurs. And then when the flood happened, God even said I'm killing the animals too, not just man. So flood happens, dinosaurs disappear. A lot of people want to say it was a big, huge ice age. We have no proof of that. But something catastrophic did happen to cause that, which is, in the Christianity view, the flood.
And there were other species of animals that also were wiped away, and Noah kept the ones that
2 of each kind
to go forward with.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
well, okay, so that kind of explains the age thing, kinda. Hold on here. So, talking about Noah.
Is it?
When the heck did he get all those animals on there and the 2x2 and did he check that there was boy, girl?
Yeah.
How did that in your mind? You have to kind of use your imagination. But the practical part, the unbeliever goes, that and Noah's Ark, that's bullcrap. I've heard that. Like, there's just no way.
Well, first off, I want to say I'm going to do a plug. Not for my wife and I went to the Ark, the experience that's in Cincinnati or Kentucky, somewhere over there. Ken Ham put together a life-size replication of the Ark.
Okay,
phenomenal. Because
where is it?
It's like I said, I think it's in Cincinnati.
Okay.
I think it is.
Okay.
But it's a life-size representation. And he did take some liberties of trying to figure out how he could fit the animals in there.
Yeah, he started kind of reverse engineering it a little bit.
He did, because not only you got to worry about that, you got to maybe have food for all the animals. Some animals are meat eaters. Some of them are plants. Some of them are need flies. I mean, it's all this stuff that he thought about and figured this out. But how did Noah do this? One, I think God was in the middle of this to help bring in the animals. Okay. But it never once said they had to be adult animals. So why couldn't they just have been smaller, younger species of them to fill the ark? Versus we always think, we have this picture
big
of the giraffe neck hanging out of it. And, none of that necessarily was the way.
Right, because
it was sealed. We do know that it was sealed.
Sealed.
Because God sealed the door. There were windows on there, but they, no giraffes' heads were poking out of the ark, in my opinion.
And the intention of the flood, I know, but just for context, because I still want to get back to the logistics of the boat and when the flood receded. But why did God have to destroy all of that and leave just Noah and his family and the animals to repopulate?
So that's really. I was just studying
in the
this.
Next 2 minutes, if you could, please.
Yeah, okay. I was just studying this the other day, because that's kind of what we're talking about in our next class. So maybe as a plug, you can watch that, because we'll be recording it.
I am recording these. I found a new little tripod, so if y'all see some of Ryan's Bible classes, you will. That's what we're talking about.
So there's the morality of mankind was so bad right at the time of Noah that God says enough is enough. And
what period of time when Noah, the ark, do we know a period? time frame?
Like putting a date on it.
Yeah, because now I know that like the world has been here for around 5,000 to 6,000 years, not
I want to
millions.
say 1600, maybe 1600, 2000. So it's somewhere right around in that time frame. I could be off a couple hundred, but
So
anyway,
1,600 years or so.
no, well, it was like 1600 or 40. It's actually something like 4600 BC or something like that. It's
early.
it was
Yeah,
way
Adam and
early.
Eve.
Yeah.
Then that population ended up
from the time Adam and Eve. It was 1600 years basically until the flood came.
So all that corruption, all the sins, and the humanity basically just started getting out of control.
Yeah.
Right?
Now the question is, the debate is, what caused all this evilness that was going on? And so what you have here, you have some very vague terminology in here called the sons of man saw that the sons of God saw the daughters of Eve. I'm trying to remember the exact terminology. I'll pull it up here a second. They saw them very beautiful, and they took them for themselves. And so the idea of this whole sons of God terminology is like we're trying to understand, what does that mean? Who is that representing? Because what we find out is later is that their offspring were very renowned, or they were men of renown. They were a little different than the rest of the population. So
mentally and just
or maybe
or
physically,
what do you say, demonic. Or possessed.
So the sons of God, one of the ideas is that they were fallen angels that saw women as very pretty, and had sex with them, and they created these offspring that were not what God intended, and they're called the Nephilim. The Bible doesn't necessarily say that because we kind of read into this, but the Nephilim were before the flood, and we see the Nephilim after the flood. So we don't know if that's because they were more spiritual beings and they could survive the flood, or was it just more of a generalized term of a type of person who's type really evil kind of a thing.
So some sort of evil, spirit or entity.
Yeah.
That happened before the flood.
Divine being.
Divine,
let's
right.
Put it that way.
But in a bad way. And that's
absolutely.
why, part of the reason why God said, this is not the direction. And really, could somebody say, well, God doesn't make mistakes? That was another thing that I think, God intended Adam to be the son of God. And then I think I read somewhere, or maybe it was in your class or online, that said that God was not pleased or regretted. I think it was a word, regretted it. Yeah. That was the word.
Yeah.
He regretted
that he had made mankind.
That's pretty heavy.
It is very heavy because you think about that a bit. But so here's what we know about God is God knows all. He's all knowing. I don't think this caught him by surprise. I think it was just this, by them saying this, it's just letting us know God's emotion towards what happened. He did not like this.
Well, and his tolerance.
Yeah, and he doesn't tolerate it, which is why he destroyed him. Mm-hmm. Because the other thing is God earlier on said, through the line of Seth, which is from Adam and Eve, it was another son of theirs, that the Messiah was going to be coming through his line. And when we follow the lineage within there, it goes through Noah. So God was also preserving the lineage of where the bloodline for Jesus was going to come down.
Okay.
So I think that in my personal view is that this was the sons of God are fallen angels of some kind, whatever happened, that, and they were intentionally trying to cause the bloodline to be distorted and changed to keep this futured Messiah, whoever was going to be this, because it was portrayed in Genesis whenever Satan tempted Eve and all of them, when they ate, he goes, I'm going to put enmity between you and their woman and their seed. And so that was a foretelling of something is coming that's going to crush you. And they were trying to stall that and keep that from happening. So as we read the Bible, we kind of see this theme throughout that Satan is trying to intertwine into mankind to keep this from happening. And so if we keep that idea in there, all these things, when we see Satan coming in, or being, taking God's people, and, moving them over here or getting them off kilter, God is preserving through the whole thing. He's preserving his lineage. His lineage,
which is, like you explained, through Noah's, got the bloodline.
And that's why he was preserved. because that was the one bloodline.
All
that
the other
wasn't
crap
preserved.
that was going on, the people who were just lost and becoming, out of control. Not Noah and Noah's line, but there's, I don't know, hundreds, thousands of people. There's thousands and
Apparently,
thousands
it was enough of corruption that was going on. That's why God saw that this was bad, and this is not the first time that won't be the last time that we see this. Because he destroys lots of stuff.
Because then you start going, well, is today is it as bad now than it was back then? How close? Okay, so we have to draw that parallel because he did it once. And if he's not going to allow it to happen, it will happen again. You wonder what that's going to be like.
And that goes all the way fast forward to Jesus when he goes into being tempted in the desert. You have Satan coming in and trying to tempt Jesus because I think Satan knew, I'm going to trip this dude up and I'm going to cause God's plan to not succeed.
Yeah, prolong it.
So Satan through this whole time is trying to thwart God's plan, and finally Jesus comes along and says, "Nope, I'm not going to be that one. You did that through Adam. You did that through Moses. You did that through David. You did that through all these things. I'm going to show you that I'm the one." And that's what he was doing.
Okay. And that actually can be shown as when you see the pattern, like if somebody were about, oh, I see. Oh, that makes sense. Oh.
Yeah.
And you go, okay.
And when you understand that pattern is there,
now
you kind of see, wow, you see how all these things are intertwined.
Yeah.
And
which is logical, right? Because this is the whole point of this episode is that we talk about, how could somebody live to be this old? How could God get rid of all of humanity and all the animals? And your trust and faith that it did happen. I mean, it's easy to question it because it doesn't make logical sense in this little narrow space and time that we're in right now. From the time you were born and the time I was born, this is about how big it is. And so we're evaluating and being critical of the Bible that was over 2,000 years ago. And we're trying to draw parallels to it. And it's just not possible because it's a different time. And we have to interpret and fill in the blanks. So therefore, when we go, okay, we have to trust that this happened, and the water surrounding the earth, preserving our bodies, the need to populate. God needed humans to populate. They needed to live longer. What point did God say, all right, I can't have y'all living to be this old anymore? Or when was the reset to the point where now we live to be around 80 to 100, 120? I think I heard 120.
Yeah, well, I mean, so it was after the flood when finally that came in. And a lot of people will say that it was through corruption that our lives are diminishing and stuff like that. And I don't believe that. So it was after the flood. And God did say that 120... They claimed that God was saying during this verse that man's lives will be whatever for 120. I don't believe that God was saying that he was putting a timeline as far as how long man will live. God was actually doing a prophecy at that point. From that moment when he said that, it was 120 years before the flood came. So God was prophesying to them, going, man's lives are going to be long.
Totally different description of the 120 years.
Yeah, absolutely. So he was just saying from here in 120 years, that's how long man has to live right now. It's not for future purposes.
And the flood came
and killed and took out everybody.
Okay, and so then after the flood, Noah's family,
starts repopulating.
Yeah, gets the bird that returned a twig that said,
showed that dry land was there.
Dry land.
Yep.
Land dries, and we all get the visual, right? Okay, where'd everybody go? I guess we're the only ones. Everybody get out and start
fresh.
It's just amazing to imagine. But yeah, right.
Well,
it's
think about this too, and this is going to sound morbid. I can't imagine what the world was like because now if all those people were killed by a flood and there's bodies, they don't sink.
Oh, right.
What was going on, the decay, what the state of everything was. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there, but I'm just imagining what that might look like.
If they're like in the water going, oh my God, look at those, there's dead bodies floating, or if the
I don't know.
Your mind going, Sharknado comes into mind, But
the animals were killed. I mean, there was a lot of death that happened to cleanse the world.
Okay. And so then Noah lived to be 150. The whole, sleeping with the relatives you mentioned, that kind of thing was
Still
more
there.
accepted. I don't know. Was it even looked at that you're aware of? Like, we
Not
really
at that
shouldn't be
time.
doing this. But
That didn't come till much later.
okay,
So no. Now I'm gonna just so that way I'm clear on this for people who are watching, that the Nephilim and the sons of God,
Yeah.
daughters of men, by the way. The other idea of that is that people believe that the sons of God are the line of Seth. So that since the Messiah was come from that line of Seth, some people say sons of God meant that this is Seth's timeline. The daughters of men are from Cain's timeline because he was kicked out and all those other people were living somewhere else. So some people believe that Seth's line, which is the pure one, and the good line, people from there were intermarrying and having kids with Cain's, which was the evil line, and they were producing an offspring, tainted bloodline, to cause all this problems. So those are two different views,
interpretations
of how this was going on,
right?
and I'll take both of them. Maybe it was both. I don't know.
If y'all know, because we're learning.
They're not going. Nobody's going to know because this has been debated for ages.
Okay, so never mind.
But you can have your own view. Yeah. You can share it. I don't care. But
there are theologians that
I have reasons to believe why I believe it was more demonic or fallen angels. But I could be persuaded. I'm always open to it.
Okay, so for those, does that explain anything to you who wanted to dispel that humans could live to be this old? If not, if you don't understand that or it doesn't make sense and you still don't believe it, it's your prerogative. I just know for me that very important. You don't have to understand everything in order for it to be true.
Absolutely.
That's something that it's taken a long time for me. That doesn't make sense. And so therefore it's not. That's not the right way to think when you talk about God, because God is infinite. Your mind can't even comprehend the type of, that's what I tell myself. I'm just a human, I'm using a percentage of my brain that God gave me to use. And there's going to be things that have happened and will happen that I can't explain. And I just have to accept it and know that God knows about it.
Yep.
God knows, and he didn't want us to comprehend it. He wants us to trust it and to accept it. And so if you're somebody who goes, I just need proof, I'm a scientist and I need to understand this is impossible. I've gone to, all these research places and they said that technically that the human body it can't live that long, nor could it ever have. And, you kind of got to go, okay, well,
conditions were different. We don't know. You weren't there.
So you can have your opinions, but having a relationship with God requires trust
and faith.
And we're human. So just stop trying to overanalyze it and accept it because it's true. I come from a background I was like, well, if that's true, then how about this? And how about that?
Well, and the last thing that I'll say is that these little things in the Bible, regardless of how we view them, it doesn't change the idea of how the whole story of what was taking place. So don't get caught up in that whole, theology debate and arguing with people over these things. And it's not worth it. It is fun to digest it and think about and talk about it.
Sure.
But it is not something that we're supposed to be really,
putting a lot of stock in
Absolutely.
trying to debate or disprove.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the thing I think is a good takeaway from this episode. Just
trust God.
Just trust God.
Yep.
Is there anything else you can think of? I don't think so. We're running out of time. But like and subscribe if you thought this episode was of value to you. Check out some of our other podcasts. We've been doing this for a little over a year now, a year and a half-ish.
It's hard to believe that.
It is hard to believe. We went from a studio that we rented to a podcast studio. Then we're here at home. We're not stopping. So we have endless content because
the Bible is endless.
The Bible has got so much content. I'm like, I got to understand it. So thanks for joining us. And
Appreciate you guys.
God bless you.
God bless you.
We'll see you on the next one.